Hey there, family. It's so good to see y'all and have y'all joining me again on Gullah Talk. I have a very special guest, the one and only Dr. Tamara Butler is joining us today. And I'm not going to tell y'all anything about her because she can talk for herself and tell y'all how amazing she is and how much she is contributing to the fabric of Gullah culture in this season. And I know for a very long time to come. So buckle up and get ready to Yeti what Dr. Butler got to say. We're going to go and get her on the stage and we'll be right back. Hang tight. Welcome to the stage, Dr. Tamara Butler. How you doing today?
I'm good. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. I am excited to have you because you are a trailblazer in your own right. And given that it's Women's History Month, and of course, you know, I like to talk about Gullah, all things Gullah. I thought, who better to crack teeth with than Dr. B? Because she know when I get around her, I get extra geechee. I don't know why when I get around you, I feel like I just want to be extra.
I mean, I love it. I mean, I think that's usually what happens. You know, when you get around your people, it come out. So that makes me feel good to know that it's like we people. So
We people. I had Dr. Ebony Toussaint on just recently, and she kind of started with that as well. Like how when you get around your people, it's just this thing, no matter if you grew up in the same area, it's this Gullah thing where we just connect.
yeah,
You know, it's natural.
it is.
Yeah. So can you share with us just a little bit about yourself and what you do, and then we'll kind of dig into some of the other questions that I have.
Sure. Well, I serve as the executive director of the Avery Research Center for African American History and Culture. Um, Before all of that, I'm just a Geechee girl from Johns Island, and I think for me, it's been an interesting and exciting journey to think about just carrying home all along the way. And so, whether it was in undergrad in New Orleans, where I got to talk about Gullah Geechee culture, or whether it was in Ohio, where I earned the name Geech from a classmate whose family is from James Island and Arendelle, but he's from Georgia. And so it was just this idea that I feel like home always followed me. It was everywhere I went. So I'm just excited to be back home and doing what I do.
Wow, you have been around. I'm happy to hear that. I went to school in Baton Rouge and spent maybe a little bit too much time in New Orleans, so I know woo, the fun that was had in New Orleans. Okay,
Yep. Hmm.
for sure. So, can you share a little bit about you talk about being from James Island?
Johns Island.
John's Island. See, I always get it mixed up. Okay, so
Johns
John's
Island.
Island.
Mhm.
What was your personal journey with Gullah heritage and like how you began to self-identify as Gullah Geechee?
Yeah, I think it was a little bit of a road. You know, being from Johns Island, a lot of people didn't identify as Gullah or Geechee because, especially generations like my mother's age, folks who were born in like the 40s and a little bit, and even before, Gullah Geechee, those words were fighting words. So me, there weren't very many people who spoke Gullah um, in public spaces, and then the other parts of it was as a result. I was just like, well, I've never heard anybody identify as Gullah Geechee. I just heard that those individuals would be like, oh, I'm from Johns Island, I'm from the island. And then it really, you start to see a rebirth in the 90s though, when all of a sudden they started seeing Geechee gear in the mall. You know,
Yeah.
People actually used to shop in the mall, but in the mall. And so
You had a little
it
spray
was,
paint shirt and pants.
yeah, exactly. It was a spray painted shirt. It was there was a couple of different shirts where they kind of readapted different logos and put Geechee on it. And so it was in that moment where there was a conversation between community members about, well, why y'all wearing it? Like, why would y'all wear it? And I'm like, well, that's who we are. And I think that that's the part that's been helpful. So it was going away to college, and I had a professor who, I don't know how we had this conversation, but he realized I was from South Carolina, and he was like, do you know the film Daughters of the Dust? And I just
Mhm.
was like, no. And he was like, this is
No.
about your people. Like, I'm so excited to like talk to you about it. And we had several discussions as an undergraduate, and it was really that moment when I realized it was still, Gullah Gullah Island was on television. So when you kind of mesh those things together in the 90s and early 2000s, it's like, oh, this is who I am. And it's reaffirmed home, and it's reaffirmed out of state as well. So I think like those are the things that made me realize like, oh, this culture is important. This identity is key to who I am.
Mhm. And a lot of us share that same story of like almost having to go away and other people bring to our attention how important what we kind of already had is. I had a similar story. Dr. Tucson had a similar story. And I think when we talk about being Gullah Geechee, you mentioned the early 90s and 2000s, it wasn't that long ago, right? That people started saying, oh, wait, there's something to this. Because I think sometimes in the literature, people may get the perception that we've always identified, but that's not always been the case.
No.
I'm intrigued by how you've kind of adapted your identification as Gullah and connected that to your scholarly work. Can you tell us a little bit about that trajectory and kind of where it's led you to now?
Sure. So I right now, I think I had a group of students coming from Texas, and one of the professors highlighted a work that I didn't really think about. It came out in 2018, 2019, and it was Black Girl Cartography. And in
Mm.
it's really it was interested in Black girls' space and places, and where are Black girls in the literature, but also where are Black girls geographically. And so in writing that piece, it was one of the first times that I got to think about like Black geographies and education. And that's really key because whenever somebody says they're Gullah Geechee, you've already mapped out where you should be, where you might be from, where
Mhm.
you could be located, where your histories are, where your storytelling comes from. And so I wanted to make that space, and help people understand like there are placemaking and there's things that we should be studying. And what I found with that particular piece is it opened up a pathway for other Black girls to return to the South, and for
Mm.
other Southern Black girls to find each other. So once I published that, people are like, I'm Gullah, I'm Geechee, I'm Gullah Geechee, I'm from, they live in California, but I'm from Alabama, or I live in Florida, but my family's really from Kentucky. When I lived in Michigan, when I was writing that piece, there were all these Black girls, Black women from the South. And so
Mhm.
in working around that, I think and helping them understand like your Southern Black girlhood, your Southern Black girl identity is very important. And
Mm.
and so just by me identifying, it took me a while to get there because I've been writing about youth activism. I've been writing about preserving communities. And so it just all came together, in that kind of scholarship around, Black girl placemaking. And then what does it mean to be a Black girl from the South, specifically a Gullah Geechee one?
I love that you said your Southern Black girl identity is important. And I love that you were able to sort of take that, write about it, and create spaces that hadn't already been created. I think that's brilliant. And kudos to you for doing that. Can you tell us what maybe are some key Gullah Geechee cultural things that are often overlooked or maybe even misunderstood?
Yeah. I think it's getting people to know we're still here.
Mm.
I get to
Mhm.
talk to people. I think the thing that's probably misunderstood is, oh, Gullah Geechee folks live only in the country. In rural communities, Gullah Geechee folks are just these artifacts or other things. And I'm like, we think about folks who come to South Carolina, you're coming to eat Gullah Geechee food, right? Like you're not. So when people are coming and you're wanting okra soup and you're wanting shrimp and grits and rice dishes, it's so helping folks understand like you are interested in Gullah Geechee culture and Gullah Geechee foodways. And that we're not just in rural areas. So as people are walking around in urban communities and they're like, well, where are the Gullah people? I'm like, where are they? I'm like,
I think we in a village in a hut somewhere.
Right. We're very much like we're standing right in front of you. We're walking on the street where, you've passed us. If you're staying downtown, we're probably working at the hotel. We might be front desk staff. We might be also visiting family. So it's helping people understand like we're literally here and we're everywhere.
Yeah. And we're everywhere. That's right.
Yeah.
That's so good. And it's interesting though, because it's almost like we're here, but we're not here. And I think back to when I first started kind of doing this work, and Dr. Tracy Weldon and even Lorenzo Dow Turner wrote about it in much of their work about how when they started working with Gullah people, they had a hard time hearing the Gullah language. People wouldn't speak it around them. They would need to really build and integrate into the communities before they realized how much Gullah was really around them, but that we chose sort of not to engage in our linguistic practice around outsiders. I wonder, how much do you think that plays a part in the fact that people may not recognize that we're here because of sort of the historical negative premise around Gullah, that when we get outside, unless you know that somebody else is Gullah, you almost, I would say hide, but you camouflage into the surroundings.
Yeah, I think that's part of it. I mean, I have a very different stance on on Gullah Geechee language than some of my peers, and I feel like it is an intimate language. Like I think about community members who used to come to my mom's house, and they would walk in and they'd be like, "What Hannah for do? Right? How Hannah doing here?" But they won't do it if they walked into another room.
That's right.
So it just feels very personal. And I think that's why people think we're not here when people hear us talk. And they're like, well, you don't sound like the Gullah Geechee folks I know. And I'm like, well, we all sound different.
That's it.
So, but that's who I am. It's in me. I just don't sound that way. And I think I don't sound that way in front of you. Maybe that's what we should be saying. Like, I don't sound like that in front of you, but in front of friends and community members I trust, that's who I sound like, because I know that we're just communicating, right? They're not interested in it for documentation
or show or entertainment. Because I can't stand that. Do it, speak it, like as if I'm a show person. Stop doing it.
Right. Exactly. I was like, you don't go to Haiti and be like, hey, I need you to speak, I need to speak Haitian Creole. You don't go to, Mexico and be like, I need you to speak Spanish right now. So I was like, it's the same thing when you come here. I would want people to just talk to me, and I'll switch into it if it comes out,
And if it comes out, and we are not obligated. One of the things I heard people talking about recently was just even that point of identifying as Gullah, where there's some people who identify, but they don't speak the language. Have you heard any kind of rumblings of that sort of people being ostracized, or because they don't speak it, that they may not own this identity? What are your thoughts on that?
I think it's there's a reason you don't speak it. I have a colleague who grew up in California, and she was like, my grandmother spoke it every now and then, but she was like, I don't speak it, but that doesn't make me any less Gullah. It doesn't make me any less connected to the land. It makes me feel disconnected at times, but I don't think community members here are interested in, at least some of the ones I know aren't interested in saying that that's the key, right? Like that's the thing that unlocks your access to this community is, can you speak the language? Because I was like, some of it I'm just learning, it's finally starting to unlock for me. I told a friend of mine not too long ago, I was just like, we used to have this saying that I think we inherited from community elders. We used to be like, man, that man ball as a Cutter Brown. And you'd be like, excuse me? And you'd be like, who is a Cutter Brown? Why is a Cutter Brown? And why is a Cutter Ball? And I was like, oh, as brown as a coulda, a turtle, right? But that didn't click for me until I would probably say within the last 5 years. And we used to say it all the
Wow.
time. Like I would hear older people saying it, and we would even repeat it. And then I was like, oh, that's what the saying is.
And it's interesting how we hear all those old sayings, and a lot of times because we didn't identify it and we didn't really attribute it to Gullah, we just attribute it to communal language. Like this just what we do, how we talk, how we live.
Right. Yeah.
And some people don't understand that. I've had that experience with somebody said, well, we're the Gullah people. I'm like, what you mean? You think we hide in? You think we in like a little fort? I don't know. Like I be trying to understand what people like. What do you envision when you think of Gullah people?
I mean, you know, when I think because we tell people that, you know, Gullah Geechee language is the closest or has, you know, all these retentions of Africanism, especially if they picked up Dow Turner's book, then they just assume that it looks away. And it's like, well, that means that you also have a misperception of what you think Africa looks like and African nations look like and African communities look like, which is something else to talk about, like the way that you picture us. But I was like, we're just everywhere. And our lives look very different wherever we are.
Very different, depending on where we came from, right? So what in your perspective are the biggest threats facing Gullah communities today, and like how can they be addressed?
Oh Lord, land.
Land.
You know, like it's land. We're losing land rapidly. I think a lot of Black communities are up against the same fight. This is a fight we've been looking at since the 70s and the 80s and earlier. Is privatization of beaches and waterways. I think that's the top one because there are certain things attached to land that I think we're going to lose. One of them is land is a place for communities to have reunions. Land is a place for us to grow food. And so we know that that's phasing out as, you know, I think there are people coming back to the land and engaging in farming, but the kind of mass farming that we saw Gullah Geechee communities doing has really declined. So we're not growing our food. And we're being pushed off of land. So a lot of Gullah Geechee people are being displaced due to property taxes, due to growing infrastructure. And then the last one is because we don't have the capital, which I think is at the top of the list, actually, because we don't have the capital to participate in, you know, paying for our property, being able to kind of counterbalance and pop up businesses so that we can support. I think we're just losing ground in that way. And those are the things that scare me the most, is knowing that there are Gullah Geechee communities that are disappearing, whether it's the kind of like I think about elders who are passing and young people who are not moving back home. So yeah, to me, they're all tied up to land. And without land, all those things really
Go away. Yeah. So how would you encourage, or what would you say to encourage that generation that's like, I'm not coming back home? And then for those who are home and trying to retain, like what words of advice would you give them?
You know, it's document your story. You know, I can't remember her name, but I'm thinking about the young woman who works with you, who said her grandfather plants. And
Megan Moore out of Hughie.
Yep, out of Big Hughie, not the little one.
Big Hughie, not the y'all wasn't paying attention, eh?
But you know, I think about the fact that she's a young teenager who was like, I didn't think that this thing was important. You know, I want to participate and talk to my grandfather, but the idea of like documenting and recording those stories, those are things we'll never get back. Even if we do get the land back, we won't, you know, grandparents aren't here forever. So if we can document those stories, record, if you have heirs property, try to get it cleared up. If that's something that you know about, know who owns the property. If you are still living in a community, you know, how can you help pay the property tax? That's also a part of the work. And then the other part is just, you know, connecting, learning the recipes, literally the ones that are being cooked, and then also the ones that have sustained us all this time. Like, what are the practices? You know, are you the generation that might want to carry the torch of organizing family reunions and gatherings, getting family albums together? Like all of those things are things that are gonna. It might not save us literally, but it will save our story. so it doesn't end up in the trash. When people pass on, it doesn't end up in the, erased. So all of those things are things we can do. Getting involved in local organizations. They're always looking for Gullah Geechee people to, like, what are your thoughts on this new conservation project? What are your thoughts on this development project? And some of us have tapped out because we're like, we've been fighting this and dealing with this for years. And so if you're a person who's interested in preserving Gullah Geechee culture, get involved in efforts that preserve our land and our history.
That's right. And doing that through storytelling, which is a major thread of our culture.
Mm-hmm.
And I think capturing those stories, but also being a little bit more loud about our stories in our families, talking to each other. So I love that you mentioned family reunions. I'm glad you mentioned that because my cousin just said we got a committee meeting. So I got to go to the committee meeting, child. Plan a family reunion. I love that. But that's where we get the stories. I think back to our family reunions and how much I learned from the elders in that space. So I am excited about giving our kids those opportunities. So I want to pivot a little bit in the time we have left to your work with the Avery Research Center and your role in leadership down there in Charleston. So what inspired you to take the role of executive director at the Avery Research Center?
Persistent friends. People have been sending me the job announcement, and I just kept sending it to everybody else. I was like, oh, I'll just post this on Facebook. Oh, I'll just pass it along. But one day, one of my friends was like, you need to go ahead and apply. And in doing that, it made me look back at something that I wrote. And so, in Proverbs, if I'm not mistaken, it's Proverbs 16:3. It's like, commit your plans to the Lord. And so I had written this card in grad school, and one of it was to direct a Black museum.
Wow.
That was like something that I wrote. And I had forgotten that I wrote that. And so I wrote that like so this had to be at least 5 or 6 years after I wrote this card, that this job opens. And so I applied. My mom kept telling me, my mom was like, she met the former director. And she was like, she just reminds me of you. She reminds me of you. And so I applied because I said, if I don't get the job, that's fine. I would like to say I didn't get it because I applied and I wasn't chosen. But I'd be really angry if the job goes to someone who's not from here and that I didn't put my hand in. And so I went for it. And and if anybody knows anything about academia, it's the campus visits that really do it. That's a part of your interview. And people showed up, and the kind of look on the dean's face when there was a community reception, and the look on his face, I was like, oh, this can be my job because these are my people. This is my community. And if they showed up for this part of an interview, I just can't even imagine what they would do when I actually get the job.
And have they shown up? Tell us about how they have showed up and showed out for you in this time.
They show up and they show out. We did an event called Avery Family Reunion, and it's free and open to the public. And they come to those events. I've been watching a beautiful reintroduction of families to the Avery. So people are coming with their grandkids. We co-sponsored a women's basketball game, and people are coming to the women's basketball game on campus at the College of Charleston. They're coming to the game with their kids and their grandkids and their organizations. They're coming to events. And I think the thing that makes me so happy is when people are actually thinking about estate planning for their families and thinking about, I'm going to donate, my grandmother's photo album or a yearbook or whatever to Avery, now that I know what you all do, and I know that you all are interested in my story. So yeah, those are the things where I feel like people are showing up and showing out with coming to events, and also just reintroducing their families and newer generations to who we are.
Yeah, and so speaking of that, for the viewers who've never heard of the Avery Center, can you tell us, what is the Avery Center? Who are you? What do you do? Because I'm assuming that everybody don't know. So we need to set the record straight real quick.
That's true. So it is Avery Research Center is a library, an archive, and a museum that focuses on African American culture and the African diaspora. And so it sits in what was a school for African Americans built 1868. And it functioned as a school, the Avery Normal Institute, until 1947. And then from 47 to 1954, we were a high school. And so it's much later down the line in the 90s when graduates of Avery decided to come together and build a relationship with the College of Charleston to turn us into an archive, a library, and a museum. And so we're the only one of our kind in this area in the Low Country that does all of those three, that's connected to a university. And so I'm just so excited about all the different things that we do. We do programming, we do archival training. All of those things exist in this really beautiful building that was designed to teach.
There we go. A building designed to teach that is now an archive for families to continue to preserve their history and culture. I think that's beautiful. And I love the work that you are doing there. Can you tell us what may be some of the most exciting or unique archival material housed at Avery that people may not know about?
You know, when people think of archives, I think they think of papers and they think of books. And so one of my favorite, we just did this recently. We had archival instruction with an African-American studies professor, and we pulled out shrimp nets. So we have like shrimping nets, we have sweetgrass baskets, we have carvings. But the thing about the shrimping nets that are so intriguing is I've never seen anybody handle them. I've only seen them in photographs. And so we had two students from the Francophone diaspora, two Black students. And one of them was like, I know exactly how to use this. Right. And I was like, so he was like, my grandfather taught me how to do this. And so to watch this young college student, you know, untangle it and tell this really beautiful story. And we were like, you know, did your grandfather make these? And he was like, no, my grandmother did. So I was like, we need to talk. Like we need to talk, but those are the kind of artifacts that are in our archive that also open up a door for storytelling.
Wow.
And so, yeah, that's one of my favorite things that we have in our collection.
Nice. So as the director, tell us, how long have you been serving in this capacity?
We're going on 5 years.
You've done a lot in 5 years.
It's been a fast ride, you know. We've accomplished a lot, and I can't believe that we're going on to year 5. And so we've secured like $2 million worth of grants. We've launched a variety of programs. I've taken students abroad, and Avery was able to help support some of those students to go to Jamaica. You know, just a lot has unfolded. We're building partnerships, hosting all the Black Studies departments across the state at Avery. Like all these things are just happening. And I was like, it's been 5 years.
That is the telltale mark of a transformational leader. Kudos to you for that work. I get excited. I just be like, look at all the things. It's beautiful to see, and how our ancestors sort of contribute to the genius is because we heard their stories, we lived with them, and we know we're making them proud. I know that. So how do you see Avery's role evolving in the coming years, and what is your vision for the future?
My hope is that Avery will really start to become a hub for Black islands. When I took on this job, that's what I wanted it to be. I think Sarah Makiba, Sarah Days writes about the South as a portal. And so even before that, I feel like I've been using this concept of portal because we're in a port city. And so I just think that, you know, these port cities are portals, and they are an opportunity to help us see the connections between, you know, South Carolina and Jamaica, South Carolina and Antigua, South Carolina, Puerto Rico, and other Black islands. And so that people can understand like our fate are connected. So all the development that we're seeing in places where like Puerto Rico is experiencing beach fronts being privatized. I was like, we already had that experience. You know, we saw that in Hilton Head and the development of Hilton Head. And so how can we work together to build solutions? I'm hoping for more convenings so we can start to have conversations about what are the connections between Gullah Geechee folks and the larger diaspora. And so, our role will be hopefully to do some more collecting, but also to digitize. We have so many materials that are, only 10% of our collection is online, which is available to everybody. No paywall, no firewall, no nothing. Just, you can check it out at Low Country Digital Library. And, we want to add more of those materials and get people to see the connections between, a community, for example, in Barbados and communities here in the Low Country.
Wow. You said a whole lot.
My bad.
No, not in a bad way. But now you got my mind going just because this portal idea blows my mind. Mm-hmm. The port city is the portal. And when you think about even how Gullah Geechee folks got here, how our ancestors got here, it was through those very same waters as a portal to bringing enslaved Africans to this land. And so for us to, I wouldn't even say reimagine, but to characterize it, for it to be characterized in that way, I think gives so much depth to the idea that I don't know that we've had enough language to bring forward. So it just brings me joy to hear it in that way, but also a lot of joy in the fact that you all are moving to digitize those archives, so that access to these materials can be spread far and wide. So kudos to you all for doing that. I think that answers the question that I had, but I'm going to put it out anyway. How can scholars, students, and the general public engage with Avery's work and contribute, though, to the mission?
Sure. So yes, Low Country Digital Library is where you can see some of our collections. Visiting our website, avery.charleston.edu is a good place to, if you want archival instruction, you want to learn about some of our initiatives, check out our programming. You can catch us on all social media platforms. The one that we're probably the most active is Instagram, and it's Avery Research Center is that handle. And then, of course, contributing to the work through donations. So, like they said, we like the kind, we'll take the kind of jingles, but we like the kind that folds. So, we love donations because it helps us process materials. It helps us put on programming. And then so that is also, that link is available. You can do online giving. You can send us a check. 125 Bull Street. That's our address at the College of Charleston. And you can also come visit us. So any of those ways are ways to contribute. And the other form of donation, in addition to money, is also thinking about where do you want your family records to lie? Where do you want them to live? And so come on by and have a conversation with us. All the information is on our website about what we take and don't take. But we would also like to have a conversation with folks about what are some things that you would like to donate. Folks we're really interested in Black teachers. So if families have Black educators in their family, if they have additional Gullah Geechee artifacts that we haven't considered, whether it be like maybe you have a Gullah Geechee clothing line and it has very unique images, let's talk about how you want to preserve those. So there's a lot of ways to donate to the mission financially and through artifacts, and then just come in to see us. We're open Monday through Friday, 10 o'clock, 10:30 to 5. And so you can come in and do research. You can come in and take a tour. Come on by and see us.
So that was your invitation to connect with the Avery Research Center. Avery.charleston.edu is the website. Go check out the archive, but more importantly, go donate. I want to challenge, if you even click on this video, you owe her $10. If you click on this video, you owe the Avery $10 so they can use it in
we
their
will
work.
Use it. But trust me, we'll put your dollars to work. So thank you.
And we know it's going to go to a good cause. We see the work that's happening. We see the family reunion that's happened for the last 2 years or 3 years. How long has that been going on?
3
years. the Avery Family Union. It's a hype event. Every time it come out on Instagram, I'd be like, I'm going. Then I end up being out of town. But I hope I can make it to the next one. But do know that I am just inspired by how much you have leaned into this role, how much you've leaned into the community and continue to serve. Now, she's not going to say this, but I'm going to say it because she is also a commissioner for the Gullah Geechee Cultural Heritage Corridor. She is on the board for the International African American Museum. She likes to be humble, but baby, y'all, she out here serving. So I also want to say this to you, to my young women who may be watching this at some point. This is the blueprint. I told Dr. Toussaint the same thing. Tell Dr. Butler the same thing. The blueprint for the young women who are coming up about what it looks like to be Gullah Geechee, to be a scholar, to come back, Sankofa, come back, get it, stay here and work and build our community. And I love to see it. So I want y'all to take this blueprint that is Dr. Butler. I want you to follow in her footsteps, expand on the work that she's doing, pick her brain, get in her head. It be people like this who just be smart. And you be like, how they so smart? I think that's why I get so excited when I talk to her, because I be like, I'm gonna learn something today. If nothing else happened, when I talk to Dr. Butler, God dang it, I'm gonna learn something today. She gonna learn me. You hear me? And I love that. I love that. So
well, trust me, that love goes back, because I know you talk about me being humble, but I was like, I just want to be like Dr. Berry when I grew up. I was like, this woman is doing 50 million things, but I was like, but it's all for the culture. And so I'm just trying to be another servant leader, like a fellow servant leader. So I just want to say thank you for the support and for the inspiration. So
absolutely. And I have to always give the flowers, because we did Geechee Girls Rock plug to Oak Pursuit Foundation and called Dr. Butler. And I was like, hey, I really want you to talk to my girls. And she said, yes. I mean, it was no hesitation. When I asked her to do this, yes. So I love that. Even just being that example of like support in the Black community, because we get a bad rap sometimes, Black women, for not supporting each other. But I can say 100%, if I call Dr. B, it's a yes. If Dr. B called me, it's a yes. That's how we roll. But she came in and she spoke to the girls just about going back outside, get in the yard, put your foot in the grass, learn about your people. And my girls continued to talk about that, and they took that to heart. Megan Moore, shout out to her, big Hughie, not the little one. But she went outside, honey, with her granddaddy and got in that garden and took pictures and interviewed him and all the things. So your words inspired that young lady to just dig in even deeper and really recognize, like, oh, wait, this is important. This isn't just what me and my granddaddy do, but this is memory, and this is holding space. So thank you, Dr. Butler. We are at our time, but before we wrap, I got to do my lightning round questions. I got to get you to answer these fun ones. So if you could time travel to any moment in Gullah Geechee history, where would you go?
To see my great grandmother. You know, everybody talks about her, and I want to meet her. Like, I want to see her in action. She, gave birth to eight kids. She raised up grandkids. I want to watch. I want to be in the kitchen, specifically when she was in the kitchen, because there's a lot of things she cooked that I do not know how to. So I just want to be with my great grandma, Miss Ollie Michael Bunnell.
Say her name again.
Ollie Michael Bunnell.
Wow, beautiful. What's your favorite Gullah Geechee phrase or saying?
My favorite Gullah Geechee, I don't know if it's a phrase or a saying. I just like the word bunkie. I just love that. That's our word.
Me too. But when I was younger, that was a bad word. My mama didn't want us to say bunkie. We couldn't say it. Could y'all say that? We
couldn't say it either. I don't think people know. So it was just like, I was like, I really like that word, because I feel like we don't use it as much, but it is definitely one of my favorites.
It's my favorite. Every time I do a presentation, I slide that word in, because I'm like, I'm gonna say this word. Y'all gonna get this bunkie today, okay? Okay, all right. Finish. Okay, if you had to describe the Avery Research Center in 3 words, what would those words be?
Sacred, radical, home.
Sacred, radical home. Hey, viewers, I want y'all to go home, go to the Avery Center, see the space, feel the space. When you get in there, it's a living, breathing space. And I just want to shout out College of Charleston. Y'all got a gym. Y'all better treat her right before I come down there. Uh,
Y'all heard it. She coming.
y'all heard it. Hey, do right by Dr. B now. But y'all really do. Y'all have a gym. You made a great hire. And I know that the Avery Center and the work that she's doing, the legacy that she's leaving is going to last a long, long time. Dr. Butler, thank you for joining us on Gullah Talk today. Gladdy for C. Anna. I hope you guys enjoyed. Please do not forget to like, subscribe, and share this video. Also, drop in the comments who else you want me to talk to, who I need to crack teeth with, who I need to bring up on this stage. I want to hear from you guys, and I look forward to you joining me on the next one. Y'all, take care now.
Thank you.